All right, and then before we get started in the round, would you guys prefer to set up an email chain or use file share?
I think email chain is best. Do you want to start it, or I can also do it if you put your email in the chat?
Yeah, we'll just drop our emails in the chat.
Cool.
Hey everyone, this is Gaurav here. I'm the judge. Let me know whenever everyone is comfortable with chatting or starting.
Okay, yeah, so just let me know when y'all are ready.
We sent you both the emails in the chat if you would start that.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll start the email chain. And in the meantime, though, Judge, do you have any particular judging any particular judging preferences or anything along those lines? Can everyone hear me all right?
We can hear you.
I was on mute.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
Sure. No, so I do use Flow, and ask questions. Use cross-examination periods to ask your questions, and have fun with it. And if you have any questions at any point, let me know. Listen to responses carefully, be respectful, and yeah.
Judge, how familiar are you with policy debate?
This is my second one, but I have been trained.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all fairly new, or have you done policy debate before?
We've done it before.
Yeah.
This is our second year doing policy, so we're strictly policy people.
Cool.
Awesome. It's our second year doing policy too.
Nice.
Okay, cool. I should be, yeah, so 1AC should be sent. Let me know when y'all got it. And Judge, just for your reference, I'm Daniel Candia. I'll be second speaker for the AF, and my partner Gabrielino is going to be first speaker.
Okay.
Okay, and then for the negative, it will go first speaker, which is Jordan Gabrowski, and second speaker, which is Taylor Melanies.
Got it.
Okay, if you can all let me know when you're ready to go.
The negative is ready whenever the affirmative is ready to start.
Actually, give me a few seconds to get my timer.
So we have Daniel and Gabriel for affirmative, and we have Jordan and Taylor for negative. Cool.
you all received the email?
You have 8 minutes of prep time each, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Judge, have you received the email? Or
Check.
sorry, did we send the email to you?
I don't think so. Can I quickly bring you?
Oh yeah, I didn't get your email, Judge. Can you drop it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get yourself on.
Okay. The email should have been forwarded to you, Judge.
I received the email. Thank you.
All right. Seeing as everyone has the email and the app is ready to go, is anybody not ready to continue? All right, great. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and start now. The United States federal government should adopt a policy restricting agricultural non-point source pollution. Advantage 1, agricultural runoff. Water quality is in steep decline now. Addressing agricultural runoff is critical. Smith et al. 19 explains that pollutants and productive inputs, fertilizers, chemicals, and soils have negative effects on human well-being. Because of the uneven implementation, assessing trends in water quality is difficult. 4,904 water bodies do not meet their supported designated uses. And agricultural runoff causes antibiotic resistance, creates dead zones, and spreads pesticides. Finney 21 explains that pollution from agriculture is linked to increased incidences of antibiotic resistance. Pesticides are highly water-soluble. Antibiotic resistance is promoted by the widespread use of non-therapeutic antibiotics in animals. The eutrophication that occurs in dead zones also poses significant health risks. And antibiotic resistance threatens the economy and the entire healthcare system. O'Neill et al. 14 explains that treatments that rely heavily on antibiotics could be severely undermined and surgery would become far more dangerous. World's economy could lose more than 7% of its GDP. Important it is that we do everything to slow the spread of resistance. Delaying resistance by 10 years could save 65 trillion. And dead zones undermine vital ecosystems, fisheries, and industry. Boehm 20 explains that nitrogen that contributes to the dead zone, largely in the form of synthetic fertilizer that run off fields. Reducing nitrogen losses is a solution that head off serious damage to the Gulf. Gulf fisheries and marine habitat in 2016 alone generated $17 billion. Reducing nitrogen could generate a large return on investment through healthier, more productive fisheries. And pesticides linger and destroy biodiversity. AHIA 17 explains that chemicals that are used to kill nematicides, used to control nematodes, as well as rodenticides used to treat vertebrate poisoning. The soil contains small, naturally occurring organisms. Pesticides destroy microbes and affect the growth of plants. They could be sent to water bodies by heavy winds or rainfall. Pesticides are toxic chemicals. The indiscriminate use of pesticides can degrade air quality around agricultural lands. Advantage to rural sustainability. U.S. industrial agriculture is devastating, modeled globally, and creates greenhouse emissions through the creation of dead zones. Sanderson 21 explains that there is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than at any point in the past 3.6 million years. Farmers are burning unprecedented amounts of forests. The U.S. Corn Belt produces 75% of the country's corn, but 35% of the region has completely lost its topsoil. The U.S. has used policy to dump surplus grain in low-income countries, undermining markets. And industrial agriculture hurts food security and destroys rural communities. ICARD 19 explains that the encroachment of ag upon rural communities results in lower incomes, greater income inequality, and poverty. Agriculture is not keeping food prices affordable. Food costs have risen faster than the overall inflation rate. And rural disenfranchisement fuels deadly populism. FOA 19 explains that the gap between the city and the periphery has become the divide. Resentment is a conflict in search of a cause that populists readily provide. Government neglect fueled populist resentment by combining material hardship with a sense of injustice. As long as inequality persists, populist pressure is very unlikely to abate. And unchecked populism leads to war. Dresner 17 explains that ambition makes it more likely that a leader will reject the status quo internationally as well as domestically. Provocations make negotiations more costly and conflict escalation more likely. Populist leaders will have greater appetites for risk. Breaking with the pre-existing structures guarantee escalation. Crisis can trigger rally around the flag effects and make it easier for a leader to suppress domestic dissent, launching diversionary wars. On to solvency, establishing minimum water standards and providing conditional support for state improvement initiatives are necessary. DeGood 20 explains that the CWA provides the authority to drive water improvements. EPA should require states to establish quantitative water quality criteria that ratchet down over time. Congress must substantially increase funding for the Section 319 grant program from $1 billion to $1 billion for competitive distribution. Increase spending for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program to $7 billion. EQIB should be amended to require that funds reduce nutrient and sediment runoff. Investments combined with more aggressively leveraging authority will deliver substantial improvements. Government can provide a sustained focus on reducing water pollution. And the plan spurs innovation and fosters a shift towards more sustainable practices. Finley 21 explains that environmental regulation can spur firms to increase their resource efficiency. Increasing the resource efficiency involves decreasing harmful resources. Under the new regulation also decreases costs. This enhances the desirability as consumer demand has shifted towards more environmentally friendly products. Exceptionalism hinders organic agriculture from competing against conventional agriculture. Sustainable practices improve soil fertility. Consumers would switch to organic because when the price of a good increases, demands for a substitute increases. Firms within agriculture are not competing over decreasing water pollution costs because agricultural exceptionalism protects conventional agriculture from responsibility for these costs. The firms best acquiescing to consumer demand, regulations, costs, and producing the best succeed. And environmental regulation and resulting innovation will make sustainable practices cost competitive. Foscolo 14 explains that ag has been transparent in its disregard of environmental health. Public health is left by the wayside. Legal regime could provide incentives. Agriculture has consistently demonstrated its aptitude for environmentally beneficial innovation, and regulators cannot solve the challenges of agricultural pollution. They can at least help to further empower the sector to find its own solutions. Legal loopholes present no shortage of avenues by which to push the sector towards sustainable methods. And the plan's regulation forces agriculture to internalize the cost of pollution, spurring innovation and more sustainable practices. Finney 21 explains that agriculture can develop innovations that reduce the industry's water pollution if properly incentivized. Innovation is imperative for the future health of the nation. Regulations carve out exceptions for the industry there is little financial incentive to invest resources in. There is also lack of pressure from consumers, policymakers, and food is ostensibly inexpensive. If the regulatory structures change to reflect the cost of water pollution, profit would align with reducing degradation and the financial effects. Thus, we affirm.
Are you guys open for cross-examination?
Yep. Give me a moment to reset my timer. All right, I'm ready.
Let me just grab that timer too. And then with that, I will begin now. So first of all, I just want to know, who is your actor?
I mean, our actor is the United States federal government. We pass it through normal means, which would mean, passing a bill through Congress, having it having it approved by the executive branch, and should a constitutional challenge arise, having it sustained by the Supreme Court.
Okay. And then who's going, in what way are you guys going to enforce it?
So it's enforced through a variety of means. It includes EPA enforcement. It also requires the EPA and the Enforcement Quality Initiative prerogative to the EQIP. It increases EQIP funding, which means that states are going to be required to meet certain quality standards. So there's a variety of people who are responsible for enforcing. Not only does it incentivize companies to do better on their own, but it also incentivizes states to enforce the plan, as well as the EPA from the federal government.
So are states going to be enforcing the plan, or is it specific to the federal government?
So like I said,
Gone
the
through
EPA
in the states.
Right. So the EPA enforces, as well as EPA funding, or as well as funding to incentivize states to enforce themselves, as well as promoting internal enforcement, whereas companies innovate in order to themselves increase the water quality, as well as decrease pollutants.
Okay. So let me just try to rephrase this. Is this is the no, what? Never mind. We'll just move on to another question. How are you protecting water resources specifically?
So we do it through a variety of means. If you're asking about our impacts, we help prevent dead zones. We help to improve. We help to prevent pesticides from entering water sources. We help to prevent ocean acidification. We help to, there's all kinds of things that we help to do, including, I think most importantly, is also agricultural runoff. We prevent, the runoff of pesticides and other chemicals into water sources.
So what water sources are is agriculture runoff getting into, and how is it getting there, and how does it benefit from getting there?
We tell you about ocean eutrophication, which means, the ocean is one of our biggest points, but any water source that's near farms, we tell you about how pesticides can be carried by big winds into lakes and rivers. It can be carried into essentially any water source that it's near a farm. So, for all intents and purposes, it's basically all water sources in the United States.
Okay, perfect. And then what impact would your guys' plan have on the economy?
So in terms of the economy, economy is largely second. I'm sorry. So you're asking about what specific economy impacts we have?
Yeah. Do you guys have any that big impacts on the economy or?
The only direct economic impact that we talk about, or actually we give two, is we talk about Gulf fisheries, which contribute billions to the economy and are largely destroyed by ocean eutrophication and other pesticides getting into water sources, as well as we talk about antibiotic resistance diseases costing trillions. But we view economic impacts as largely secondary compared to the huge loss of life that we can see from the variety of impacts we provide.
Perfect. Okay, and then that's the end of cross-examination.
Okay.
Are you gonna need prep? Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, and then we're just gonna start some running prep right now at 8 minutes, starting now.
Cool.
we're going to stop prep there, and then we will email you this document. And how much prep do we have left? 5:30? 5:44. 5:44 is what we have left. So we'll get this emailed over to you and then get our speeches going. I will be speaking for this speech, so.
Sounds good. Yes, for the prep time, you use 2:16, so you have 5:44 left, and you have my email address, right? Cool.
Have y'all sent the 1 and C?
Just finishing typing the
Yeah, we're
emails.
just finishing typing the emails real quick. Will you, affirmative side, type in your emails into the thing so we can start an email chain from our side?
Okay, we had the email chain already sent. I mean, if it's probably easier to hit reply all, but I don't think the judge was in that email chain. So.
Yeah, that's why we're creating a different one. We'll have that out to you guys in just 1 second. All right, that should have sent. Let us know if you guys received that.
I got it.
All right, I got it.
Perfect. Does everybody have it then? Okay. As just a little off-time roadmap before I start my speech, let me get my timer set up real quick.
Wait 1 second. To clarify, it's just so it's titled Incentive CP, but that's the whole doc.
So there's more stuff in it, but yeah, that's the whole.
Okay.
Doc.
Just making sure.
So as a little off-time roadmap, I'm going to be reading an incentive CP, some solvency, case-specific cards, Econ DA, and EPA resource DA. And if everybody is ready, I will begin my speech now. Incentives CP. The United States federal government should increase substantial incentives for the affirmative ag case reduction in pollution areas. An incentives-based water approach is key to water protection, Eisman 20. The threats to water security extend beyond the arid parts of the world. Incentive-based water allocation is one of the strategies that can ensure flows for both human and environmental needs. Attempts to regulate demand fail to gain traction in incentives-based on approaches, face political resistance, financing falls short, and data displays. Policy reforms and public investment favors supply-side solutions, increasing supply. And current levels of demand cannot be sustained. The shift to developing new water supplies towards water conservation and relocation. Incentives appear key goal to efforts. Advance 3 specific areas where research can support an incentive-based water management, identifying substantial water use, designing and testing incentives, and evaluating impacts of incentives. Solvency cards, case-specific. Ag subsides are crucial to limiting water consumption and can considerably subside agricultural sector. The greatest consumer of water resources, Albert 20. Agricultural sector is the greatest consumption of the world's water resources. Optimizing the water consumption is often the highest priority. A major with smart meters, water meters in agriculture and high levels of reluctance of farmers to adopt them. We offer monetary incentives to farmers who are willing to adopt a smart water meter. We use a contradictory subsidiary similar to collective bonus. A farmer who adopts a smart water meter gets to subside if the collective adopt rate reaches a given threshold. Subsidy to induce farmers to adopt the smart water meter. Incentives have been put into place in different locations for water policies, and they do work. Kirishin, Sawabi, and Connor Kirby 10. Rising demand to freshwater and agricultural, industrial, and multi-piscinal sectors as a finite global water supply mean that less fresh water is available for the environment. We evaluate 2 incentive-based policies that are available to acquire the environmental purposes for agricultural entities. One evaluated approach mimics entering an existing market to buy annual water rights, leases, or permits rights from irrigators. The water market approach has been gaining favor for some parts of the world. The other incentive-based policy for generating environmental water considered involves payments for upgrades in irrigation, efficiency, and conveyance. Defined here is the investments reduce irrigation and conveyancy sea package, leakage, appropriation, and drainage losses. Many governments, including Australia, focus on this approach by improving efficiencies allows for less water use by irrigation without reduced production. What this is basically saying is that we need to further give incentives so that we can stop these things from happening. And the affirmative kind of talks about how these things are happening. But we first off need to start by giving them the incentives first instead of just subsiding the problem there. Next, I'm going to be going on to an Econ DA. Uniqueness. The economy improving, but business keys confidence. Bosenbaum 5.4. Confidence among small business owners has rarely risen as fears of inflation, hiring costs, tax hikes, and participant politics weigh on the Main Street, and as it shows some signs of returning to the pre-pandemic levels. The U.S. economy is staging a sharp recovery in several rounds of stimulus checks that have buoyed consumers. President Joe Biden's infrastructure plan spending priorities is also expected to provide an economic boost. Main Street is also concerned about the price of raw materials rising. These things are a real impact. Small business sectors are ability to get back to pre-pandemic levels of confidence. The change of the administration has caused a shift in small business owners feel about tax, regulatory, and immigration policy. Linked to federal regulators cause an investor flight, financial turmoil, and political shift that tanks the economy and turns the case. Gary 15. The expansion of the government regulation in the 1970s coincided with a slowdown in productivity growth. Using the industry-level data, found a greater productivity slowdown in the 1970s in the industry with a higher pollution endemic cost. Another studies found that large impacts on productivity, suggesting under-report costs at paper mills and steel mills. In addition, examining to the direct cost of the environmental regulation on productivity, economists have studied how firms respond to regulatorily given cost differences. Much of the research has explained the decision of where to locate a plant. A profit maximizing firm should consider the factors besides the factors of prices available, the regulatory compliance. More stringent regulations discard firms from locating particular jurisdiction. Politicians might weaken regulations. This possibility is a race to doom, especially likely for the damages of a pollutant that are widely dispersed. Internal link. U.S. decline causes Iran war, making the decline go global. There is no safeguards. Rabunin 18. Once correction occurs, the risk of iniquity will become more severe. Emerging markets in the advanced sectors will no longer have access to the federal government backstop that central banks provided can no longer count on. Temptation for Trump's wag the dog by manufacturing foreign policy will be high, especially if Democrats take the House. His best target would be Iran. By provoking a military confrontation would trigger a geopolitical shock that would make global recession more severe. Policies for addressing will be severely lacking. Stimulus is limitedly intolerable. Impact and escalates to nuclear hotspot. Parasitic 18. Modern financial carries the enormous potential benefit when the accidents are more spectacular. Even when peripherally the economy plunges, the century can hold capitalism together. The century might crack in the event of a new turmoil. Markets are going gangbuster despite the threatening trade wars, distributing to the top 1%, taunting via Twitter, untruths attack about media, floating laws, and causing autocrats. So we're just going to cut the card there. It's basically saying that if our economy is bad, we're going to have to be able to prepare for this, prepare for war or any weaknesses in our government. EPA resource DA uniqueness. The EPA is reconfiguring the focus on PFAS, but not tie deadlines to make prioritization key. Fregnal 21. The proposed legislation aligns the Biden administration's priorities of a whole government approach of regulation that Biden has pledged to prioritize the study of regulation of PFAS. The administration bill would dedicate $10 million towards PFAS and monitoring the remediation. Pledging PFAS is an agency-wide priority, and the legislation compelled the EPA to take action of PFAS in a short time frame. Given the already undertaken by the EPA, the bill's effect is not necessarily for the EPA's hand. The tight bill deadlines and a headlight tension between the administration's desire to regulate PFAS quickly and an enforcement of the sound of silence. The PFAS action leaves the EPA with significant discretion over the future regulation. This legislation embellic of the sea changes at a federal level and are likely to harbinger the significant litigation and enforcement activity. The EPA does not have the resources to expand the enforcement. The plan results in trade-offs of other programs. RDN 94. The problem is the EPA nor the states process the resources against the act's large number of violations. Overboard approach to push agency towards enforcement could siphon the enforcement personnel from the programs, whereas the work is more valuable. Internal link, ensuring the efficiency of the EPA to solve for the PFAS and otherwise state leadership will wreck enforcement. Remel 21. And that seems that my time is up. I open myself up for cross-examination.
Okay, great. I'll start. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, in that case, I'll start my time now. Now, starting off with your econ DA and looking specifically at your internal link, does the same temptation for Trump to go to war apply to Biden that you talk about in your Rubini 18 card?
So what I'm saying there is that we've already had this kind of same economic fall, and then plus you get like code in there. So not saying that every president is the same, but there's still a chance that this could happen in any sort of situation, whether that's Democratic or Republican.
Okay, and can you talk specifically about, can you explain this Rubini 18 card? Like, how does U.S. decline cause Iran war?
Okay, so what I'm saying there is when the U.S. like democracy and our economy is low, it makes us more of a target for other countries. And so if we don't have a good economy to stand with our country, then we have to be able to subside and be able to like withhold the fact that passing the affirmative plan could result in this or has a high chance of resulting in this.
Okay, now looking at your incentives, CP, what incentives need to be provided?
So I go through there and I talk about three like main incentives. Let me find them. there's like they have to be in by identifying substantial water, designing and testing incentives, and evaluating impact incentives. So there needs to be incentives saying that, well, if these people are going to be doing this, not only are they going to be getting like if the farmers are taking these incentives from the government to be able to properly farm or whatever needs to be done alongside of that, that these incentives are not only making it so they can produce more at a higher level, but they're not also contributing to the fact that if they aren't given this incentive, then they cannot produce at a high level, if that makes sense.
Okay, and why is that mutually exclusive with the plan?
Because when you don't give somebody incentive and you tell them you have to do this, then they're not going to want to do that, and then you get pushback from those people.
Okay, so your point is that we can't like pass policies that force people to do things. We need to do it through incentive means by providing money to companies and stuff like that.
Not just money, but like an incentive saying, well, if you do this, then here is the bigger benefit towards you. Like if you're going to subside new let's say new farming equipment that produces quicker, not only is it an incentive that they're making one, more money, and two, that they're able to help the economy. That's kind of a bigger incentive that benefits not just them, but the whole United States.
Okay, and why can't we just force them? Like, what's the negative there? What's the impact?
So if you force somebody, there's always going to be pushback. If you're telling them you cannot do this, even though we live in the United States and there's already essentially we have the rights and freedoms to do things. If the government is like, no, you cannot do this with your crops, you cannot do it this way, then there's going to be some sort of pushback.
All right, and where in your evidence does it say that?
It's kind of there's some case specific things in our CP talking about, and if you look, talking about how basically that if they are told that they have to do this, it's the Cushionary, Sabari, and Connor Kirby 10 card that we read under this case specific solvencies. It's talking about how that there's always going to, like, if you're telling them they can't do things, even though they've done them that way for so long without an incentive, then they're going to say something about it.
Okay, that's a cross.
Okay, I'll be sending out the to AC. Hit save.
Make sure you do.
Daniel, you ready or you're prepping?
I'm sending out the speech right now. Just give me one sec.
Cool.
Springboard. Okay, the 2AC should be sent. Let me know when y'all got it.
Just for clarification, we are specifically talking about NPS, right? From a debate perspective, NPS pollution, or was that just for one AC?
The plan is NPS pollution, but the resolution is water resources. So that's sort of what we're going for. But yes, the plan is non-point source pollution. Okay. So did everyone get the 2AC? Cool. In that case, sec. All right, and the order is going to be case, the CP. Oh, give me one sec. Oh, wait. It seems like the. Hold on. Do you guys see the CP answers? Because I think there might have been a issue.
Yeah, what do you want us to look for? Will you pull it up?
There should be a headline that says CP.
Give her 2 seconds. She's pulling up.
CP. Yeah, there's nothing
it just says CP and then econ DA.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna probably fix that real quick.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
I'll send out a new version. Okay. Maybe my partner can do it because my word just crashed. So
Okay, I'll go ahead and send it so the email will come from me instead.
I do have the document where on page 4 it says CP Econ DA environmental regulations for innovations, and it's highlighted in blue. Is that the one?
Yeah, but I think my partner forgot to save and so sent an updated doc. So I'm just working on sending a newer doc, but we're having some technical difficulties. Word crashed on my partner's computer, so we're trying to figure that out.
Got it. And just so that I have it right, Gabriel, you went first, then Taylor, you went. Now, Daniel, you're going to go, and then it's going to be Jordan, right? Cool.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, Gabriel went first. Oh, I think it says for me that our judge's connection just got lost.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Judge, will
Can
you
you-
say that again?
Yeah, so I was saying first, Gabriel, you went first, followed.
Oh. We've lost our judge. I know you have someone from Tab in here. Is that correct? Oh, okay.
Did that disconnect for everyone? Was that just me?
Yeah, you disconnected for all of us.
Oh, okay. So for me, the whole thing crashed and it restarted by itself. My question was, I just wanted to get names right. So Gabriel, you went first, followed by Taylor. Now Daniel's going to go, and after that, it's Jordan, right?
Yes, that's correct.
No,
And
Jordan read that.
I'm Jordan, and I spoke first speaker on the negative side.
Got it. Okay. The email came from Taylor, so I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah,
Jordan.
I used her computer because my computer was being a pain.
Got it. No worries. No worries. I just wanted
okay,
to.
I'm so sorry. I was having technical difficulties. I think it's due to the fact that we're live streaming, but I should be fine now. Okay. Let's see if I can. Resend it to AC.
yeah, I think we've been having some technical difficulties all day long.
One sec.
Okay, so my partner lost his file. So I think it's corrupted or something. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take prep right now while my partner basically creates his doc, and we'll just take running prep.
Sure.
In that case, I'll start my prep time now.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're gonna pause prep at 1 minute. We're still having trouble, so my partner is gonna leave the call and restart his computer, and hopefully that'll fix things up.
I'm going to read back in 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, what happened?
The judge had to go do something. He'll be right back in just a minute.
Oh, okay. My partner is joining back right now, I think.
Okay, I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties, but did you guys get the 2AC or the correct version of the 2AC this time?
She's checking right now.
Okay.
Perfect. It looks like I did. Is it just 2AC, Doc?
Yep.
Perfect.
We'll let you know
Okay.
if anything that you're reading doesn't match up later.
Yep. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for putting up with that one. All right. So the order is going to be case, then the counter plan, then the econ DA, and the EPA
We're
DA.
still the judge left for a moment, so give it a
I'm
moment.
good.
Oh, there
Thank
we go.
you. Continue.
Okay. Okay. So Judge, did you get the speech doc?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Perfect. Yep. So in that case, since everyone seems ready, time starts. Now they don't have any responses on case at all in their previous speech, which means you give it a 100% on your flow. Their solvency is specific to their counterplan, not case. So on to our advantages. First is agricultural runoff. Water quality is declining now due to agricultural runoff. This leads to antibiotic resistance, which collapses the healthcare system, killing millions and costing $8 trillion. Dead zones that are created by runoff destroy oceanic biodiversity, costing billions of dollars. Onto rural sustainability. Industrialized agriculture has caused two key problems. First, lower food security for rural communities. And two, increased populism, because these communities are more likely to vote for populists. These populists are more likely to start a global war because they ignore international law. On solvency, the AF first imposes requirements for minimum water standards and boosts funding for various programs to ensure water quality and limit agricultural pollution. That's the good evidence. The requirements to incentivize firms to innovate and consumers to shift toward organic product due to limited expenses. That's the Finney evidence. And increased innovation as a result of competition cuts emissions. That's the Finney evidence, which introduces sustainable rural agriculture. That's the Curd evidence. Onto the counter plan. Critically, first, the AF is actually incentives. If you read out of the good evidence, we tell you that we incentivize through conditional state funding. That is critical because that means that states are incentivized to innovate. And we increase the funding for EQIP, which is a program that is meant to incentivize farmers to adopt sustainable policies. And we increase the funding for R&D for agriculture, which is more likely to incentivize them towards pushing towards organic agriculture. The AF is incentives. So this counter plan does not cannot be used. And more importantly, their counterplan does not have a solid net benefit. We asked them what the benefit of the counterplan was. They just say that there won't be backlash. That automatically tells you right there that this counterplan is not competitive because backlash and pushback are not inherently important impacts. They don't give you a quantifiable or even important impact apart from farmers being mad. That is not good enough for competition. And perm do both. You can do both. A threat and compliance of REC mitigate industry fallout and are uniquely endorsed to compliance. Threats alone fail. Coggan 6.3. Voluntary programs are unlikely to substitute for regulations, but whether minor impacts, they depend on existence of mandates lurking in the background. The role of voluntary programs appears to be as a method of supplement for government regulation. It should be a supplement. Skip the Williams card. And only the AF solves. Stringent requirements are necessary to solve changes in farming practices. Rebuttal 14. Under voluntary approaches, difficult or expensive to entice farmers to allow select which management systems to implement. The TLM goals are usually not met. And only regulation solves. The status quo proves financial assistance alone does not induce change. Gallner 18. The threat of regulations is a powerful motivator to some farmers to start changing their practices. Long as we can rely on voluntary action, it is going to be an uphill battle. Onto the econ disadvantage. First is the powder hypothesis. Environmental regulations spur innovation and increase farm competitiveness. Aber et al. 11. Strict environmental regulation does not inherently hinder competitive advantage against rivals. Indeed, they often enhance it. Environmental regulations such as technological standards, environmental taxes, or treatable emissions permit source firms to allocate inputs. Pollution itself is a waste of resources, and reduction may lead to improvement in productivity. More stringent, the purely designed for environmental regulations can trigger innovation and may lead to offset costs for complying with them. This means that the AF actually solves for their impacts, which means this, if anything, should be going AF. And critically, their evidence is flawed because their cards don't specifically point out why small business is key. They just say that in the tagline, but their Rosenberg evidence doesn't indicate why small business or business confidence is uniquely important here. And the Rosenberg evidence is at the peak of COVID. They need more recency given the economic changes that we've been experiencing over the past few months. And their other piece of evidence is specific to Trump. All they do is speculate about whether or not Biden would adopt the same policies, but that's not good enough here. They either need more recent evidence or they need to prove why Biden is taking up the same approach as Trump. They don't have any of that. That means you don't buy their disadvantage. But on the skip the Amber 11 card. But on the no confidence link, reg impact is small, Spectre 17. Some business owners are ambitious about losing regulations and no purpose. Average small business owners spending at least $12,000 every year dealing with regulations. Over 1/4, 27% of respondents gross between $1 and $5 million. The regulations are not enough for them to lose confidence and do both transit compliance and that's where this misformatting of the CP cards. Critically, they can't prove any uniqueness on this disadvantage on neither recency nor their impact. So you can't grant them the impact here. Onto their EPA trade-off disadvantage. First is non-unique. Resources are drained now. That's true over decades. EPA 513. The decline in enforcement resources primary driver behind declining enforcement trends resulting in fewer compliance, motivating activities, and enforcement actors. EPA leadership has also made strategic decisions that account for enforcement, such as focusing on limited resources. These new laws increase the size and level of activity, but the EPA's capacity has not been decreased. And the EPA is currently underfunded. Congressman 524. 2 decades of stagnant funding have left the EPA without resources to take vital activities against project environment lack of funding, hamstring the clean hazardous waste and regulations. Cut the card there. Critically, the AF solves here because if you really are the good evidence, we increase EPA funding by up to $8 billion. We are the ones that solve the problem that the DISAD points out. If you want the DISAD to go away, then you vote AF. And only the AF solves because stringent requirements are necessary to force the farming practices. This is again misformatting. Crucially, on the EPA trade-off DA, they don't read you an impact. That should already be a reason to reject the disadvantage. Don't let them stand an impact because that skews competition. The PFA not having clarity is not enough if an impact here. They don't read you any reason why this trade-off will be bad in the first place. The critical thing about the negations off-case positions is that the AF solves for every single one of them. On the counter plan, we are incentives already. They can't have a counter plan for something that already the AF does. On the first disadvantage, we actually bolster the economy, or it's not big enough for the disadvantage to actually be triggered. And on the EPA disadvantage, we increase EPA funding, which means we solve for any possible trade-off that the EPA has to make because the resource link is solved by the affirmative. Fundamentally, any impact that they have should already go to the AF because we solve for it in all of our solvency evidence. And given the fact that they don't respond to a single card that we have in our case, then you're going to automatically weigh our case against theirs. We solve for all the impacts they point out, and we get all their benefits. On every single level of this debate, you should already be voting AF. All right, I'm open for cross.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get our timer going. Judge, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
Well then I will begin. So you did perm the CP, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So what if these farmers aren't going to follow the incentives or follow the enforcement?
Well, they have to follow enforcement.
What if they just quit? Like, what if they just quit farming?
They're not.
No, how can you prove that somebody who is forced to do something is not going to backlash?
Because it in their best interest not to backlash.
So just because it's best interest when somebody is forced to do something. Okay. So where are you getting all this money from to combat these plans?
Well, we alter the regulations for the current companies, which means there will more likely be some financial burdens. And second, it would most likely be just reallocation of funds by Congress, which they can do given that it's an executive agency.
So the government's going to be giving money.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. That is the actor.
Okay. Well, how are you going to get this money? Like, does the government already have this money? Are we raising taxes? What's going on there?
Well, most likely they would raise the debt ceiling. That's what Congress always does.
Okay. So you've been brought up these points throughout your last speech, saying that the states are going to be doing this. The states are going to be doing this. Why does your plan matter on a federal level then?
Wait, no, hold on. You're misunderstanding how our plan is implemented here, right? What we're saying is that the federal government, one, sets the regulation standards, two, allows individual farmers to comply because they incentivize that, and then three, we use a method of competitive funding under Section 319 of federal funding, which is what allows states to regulate themselves and serve as an incentive for the states, right? But the federal government would be.
Why is it so necessary to have it on a federal level when the states already have the means to do this?
Wait, they don't.
So, okay, hold on. Listen to my question. You're saying that the government's just going to basically give them the money to do this. Why is it such a big thing when they already have the money to do this?
They don't have the money.
Okay.
You now read evidence that they do.
So you talk about how the EPA has no funding. So not only are you going to be funding the states to be able to do this, you're going to be funding the EPA to enforce it too.
Yep.
So you're getting the money from the government.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you say that small businesses do not contribute to the economy?
They do contribute to the economy.
Okay. And just as a last question, do you have any recent evidence saying that the economy is good and strong?
No.
Okay, that is all I have.
We're just going to start some running prep, and we will start that now.
We're going to stop prep there with 242 remaining, and then we are going to send this document over to you guys. Did you guys all get that email?
No.
The dissent.
Got it.
Is that good? Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Open the doc.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. As a bit of an off-time roadmap, first of all, I'll just be going over some of like the basic things, some of just like the basic arguments to be used for the round, and then I'll move on to like my card arguments where I have evidence for them, and that will mainly be the incentive CP and the econ DA. So, is everybody ready? Perfect. And then with that, I will begin. So first of all, we're just going to talk about the economy attack that my opponents had. They talked about how all of our cards were from the Trump administration. However, they were not able to bring up any other cards proving that the economy like has changed since then. They were saying, oh, they need recent cards. However, they were unable to provide any other more recent cards that try to prove their plan. Therefore, you're not going to buy this argument at all today, Judge, because if they are unable to prove it, then you're going to go with the most reliable piece of evidence, which is the negative evidence in today's round. This was brought up during the first negative constructive speech. Next, we're going to talk about how there was no response to the affirmative on case. This argument is going to just completely fall. All of our cases go directly link to their arguments, and like the neg's burden of proof is not to sit and prove every single one of the stock issues wrong. We have to win on one single thing. And right now we are trying to win on the CP, econ DA, and the EPA overstretched DA. So now let's move on to our incentive CP. So the CP is so important in today's round, and I'm going to tell you why. The affirmative permed it. However, this isn't a plan that we can just perm. By forcing the AFS plan, like mentioned in the cross-examination, people aren't going, there's no way for us to listen. Like the affirmative talked about how, oh, we'll just force like the people to do it and just force the states to follow and concede. We have evidence to prove that that doesn't work and it actually causes economic downfall. And I'll read that a little bit later, but it's huge. And like it's just huge in today's round, because if these people aren't going to listen, then like there's no point in it. You can't do you can't do the incentive and the plan, because the incentive is the first way in doing it and letting us like promote democracy and making sure that people are still able to work on their own and do their own thing. So now we're just going to move on to an extension really quick. So financial and tax incentive programs persuade farmers to use water efficiently. These incentives see dramatic beneficial results in production. That's Brumbaugh and 16. Reducing vulnerability to droughts, preventing the worst impacts through water resources development began mainly through private investment. Investments. This was followed by the 1902 Reclamation Act and expanded fairly quickly through a series of congressional intentives, which led rapidly to a federal role. Financial and tax incentive programs that persuade farmers to use water more efficiently. Irrigated farms accounted for roughly 40% of the United States agriculture production. So cut the card there. This is just showing that the incentives have worked before. We even read a card during our first speech how it worked in Australia. We know this is going to work and we know it's going to be beneficial. And we have to work through it by just providing the incentives rather than being oh, here's incentive, but we're also just going to heavy down and do it ourselves as the federal government. We want the incentives to be directly to the people. That way the people themselves are the ones acting. Now we're going to be moving on to the enforcement kind of attack that we have going on here. So federally regulating farm practices is the biggest threat to farm bottom lines. That is DORIG in 16. Efforts by the federal government to regulate agriculture is one of the biggest challenges facing farmers and ranchers. If we're going to let the government dictate where we can and cannot farm, then this is not a land of liberty. Regulations from the EPA and Army Corps of Engineers to curb pollution in small waterways on wetlands so that he could infringe on that he said he could infringe on farmers and ranchers and saddle them with higher costs. Federal government to put in place regulations requiring the districts and indirectly farmers to adopt conservation practices. Okay, we're just going to cut that card there. Basically, this is just talking about if you sit there and you're trying to force people to if you're just trying to force this idea you need to follow this and this and this rule, then it we're not giving the farmers the liberty that they need. And then we have the result of that as our next part. And then again, this is just extensions onto our incentive CP and arguments brought up before. So changes on farm practices cause farm bankruptcy. That is Cook in 2020. With new programs and soon come new guidelines on how to use funding provided farms that can prove to be unattractive for some producers. Mixed reaction to increased funding paired with impossible regulations or farmers are struggling to keep their operations from going bankrupt. Practices require specialized equipment or different equipment that's way out there. Asking people to change something they've been doing for so long, just scrapping by when you're asking them some kind of jump off the deep end and try something completely different. It's scary. Just cut the card there. This is just explaining that lots of farmers are going to have the potential to go bankrupt because if they're trying to enforce all of these new programs and guidelines and things like that the Affirmative plan is trying to promote, then they're going to have to change the complete way that they've been farming and that it's been working for a long time. Whereas if we provide incentives, then the people who want those incentives can take the step forward and choose to use these incentives and choose themselves whether or not they want to change it. And we will still see results as we talked about before. So now we're going to be moving on to the Econ DA. With all the money that we put into the infrastructure bill, the economy cannot handle the Affirmative's plan. That is the White House, November 6th of 2020. Today, Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure deal. The president promised to work across the aisle to deliver results and rebuild our crumbling infrastructure after President put forward his plan to do exactly that and negotiated a deal with the members of Congress from both parties. This historic legislation is moving to his desk for signature. We're going to move down on the card a little bit. This historic legislation will deliver clean water to all Americans and eliminate the nation's lead service lines. The bipartisan infrastructure deal will invest $55 billion to expand access to clean drinking water for households, businesses, schools, and child care centers across the country. The legislation will invest in water infrastructure and eliminate lead service pipes. Cut the card there. This is going to be huge in today's round today. Judge, because the infrastructure bill that just passed is already putting so much money, $55 billion into water. So if the Affirmative, like they said, are going to be funding from the federal government, not only their plan, but also the EPA to help enforce their plan, they're going to be putting so much more pressure on the government. Again, this is only just the $55 billion is only towards the water. Our government, our economy is going to be trying to find a happy medium right now. And we're not going to be able to do that with the Affirmative plan because we just passed this bill and it costs a lot of money and we are going to just need to let it work its way out rather than putting more and more money and more funding and things like that the government needs to just give to people. So kind of to sum this up, we went over the the incentive CP. This is going to be huge in today's round because first of all, providing incentives is key to promoting democracy and key to making sure that the people are able to fix these water resources their own way, and we won't see any of the backlash like we've talked about. And then as for our economy, we just simply cannot follow through with the Affirmative's plan. It's going to cause too much economic issues. Like we kind of talked about in our first constructive speech, we're still recovering from COVID-19, and we just have a lot of things on our plate as the United States economy right now. And so just adding this like big affirmative plan to not only like fund the plan and the EPA is just huge and totally out of stretch. As for the EPA overstretch and DA, there was this argument that we didn't finish it, the impact. So I'm just going to go over really quick and read that if I can. Actually, there's no more time, so we'll just stop there and I'll open for cross-ex.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Time starts now. You didn't have any specific case answers, right? You're just
No.
gonna weigh your off cases. All right, cool. On the incentive CP,
Mhm.
what specific incentives do you provide that are different from the AF?
So for like, let me read through them really quick. Hold on, just give me 2 seconds. It's financial and tax incentive programs.
Okay. So, okay. Then on the increased private investment, what is this card referring to? Just like investment in general and showing how incentives have worked in the past?
I'm sorry, what were you?
So you have a card that says that incentives have worked in the past. What empirics is this referring to?
Are you talking about the one that we brought up during the first constructive?
No, the one that you just read.
The one that I just read?
Yes.
That one.
I believe it's your Sankiev and Wilner 16 card.
Okay, and then what was the question again?
What incentives is this referring to, or is it just incentives in general?
It's the one we just talked about, financial and tax incentive programs.
From 1902?
From 1902,
Cool.
Let me look really quick. But it's congressional incentive. No, hold on. Yeah, no, it was the financial and tax.
Okay. On your bankruptcy card, farmers are going bankrupt. Why?
They're going bankrupt because there's this huge problem. Like when you're shifting from one thing to another, you're going to have to buy new equipment for it, shift
Okay.
the way that you've been working for a long time, and this is just like a huge thing. And
Okay. On the econ disadvantage,
Mhm.
where in your card does it say that more spending will put pressure on the economy?
That would be from our original. That would be from our first constructive speech.
Okay, wait, but the tagline of the White House card is, with all that money we put into the infrastructure bill, we can't handle the AF. Where
Well,
does it say that?
that's like a basic thing. If we're putting $55 billion like towards water alone as like a small part of the infrastructure, then we're going to have a big problem.
Okay, so we passed the infrastructure bill already. Has the economy crashed?
Yeah, we passed it a month ago because it's totally been like in effect to now. Like we need to wait for it to get its effects so that way we can see what's happening. We need, like, this is one of those things where like it's going to take time before we get statistics. You can't take statistics from just the first month.
Okay, so here you have two links. You have like the economic pressure and you have the business confidence. What are you going for?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So first, your 1NC was about business confidence. This is about like overspending. What are you going for?
The business confidence was talking about COVID-19, which is what we kind of talked about, how there's already a big pressure.
Wait, so are you going for business confidence?
Business confidence is trying to build up from COVID-19, and we're also dealing with the infrastructure, so it's both.
Okay.
Did you all get muted automatically, or did you just go on mute?
I don't need any prep, and I'm basically any cards that I'm going to mention are going to be either ones read in the last negative constructive or the first negative constructive. So basically, I don't have any new evidence or anything along the lines of that. And then before I start, just as an off-time roadmap, I'm just going to be going over like the basis of this debate today. What is the the frame of both sides, and then I'm going to be talking about the economy, and then back over the just a lot of the things that were asked in today's round, and then just go from there. So if everybody is ready, I will begin now. First off, we're just going to look to the whole basis of the Affirmatives plan. Their plan is we are going to force these people to do this so that we don't have these faults. And they talk about how we are not going to be, if they are not forced to do this, then we're going to have this problems. But they don't look at the backlash. If the federal government is going to be pushing these people, you can look back to the card that we read talking about how these people aren't going to be able to have those freedoms to do as they please, or the farmers aren't going to be able to do their jobs because these people are, because the government is literally telling them you have to do it this way or else we are not, like that's it. They don't get anything like that. So Affirmative can't withhold saying that these farmers aren't going to go, well, screw you, I'm not going to farm anymore because you're telling me that I can or cannot do it this way and I've done it this way forever. And so you can basically refer to our Doe Ring 16 card talking about how these farmers and ranchers are facing these problems because they're just like, well, you have to do it this way. And if you're not going to do it that way, then they're just going to be like, then you do it. You do it yourself because we're not going to take part of something that we do not agree with. So that's what the Affirmative plan is based on, is saying that the government is going to force these people to be doing these things, and which, if we link that, it's going to be bad for the economy. As my partner talked in her last speech, she basically talked about this infrastructure bill, which, let me just get more into depth to this. This infrastructure bill was literally just passed to the White House on the 2nd of November. Therefore, it is like the most recent evidence. And what we can say there is the argument there in place is saying that we have taken out $55 billion to put towards infrastructure and water. And if we're going to be doing this now, and then we're going to be pushing this agricultural plan that the Affirmative has, for the not only are we paying government money for what they both said was for the EPA and for the states to be able to put this place in plan, we don't have the money to do that. And if we're going to be pushing this plan, then you're going to see an economic fault. It's kind of a common sense basic argument. If the money's not there and we take the money out, then what happens to our economy? One, the prices have to raise on taxes because these people have to be able to pay this money back as the United States federal government, because that's how democracy works. And so that's kind of a logic-based argument that my partner had brought up. And so we're going to be weighing that pretty largely in this round today, because the Affirmative cannot withhold for the economy of the United States if they're not able to find a place for this money to come from, because we took out such a large infrastructure bill, which is helping our water safety. Then we're going to be basically, the economy needs to be there for our government to be able to run, or else you're going to look into those war tactics, as I brought up, how we were going to have that because of what President Trump did. We were at lack of war. Now, if our economy isn't going to be running properly, or we don't have the sufficient means to run the economy properly, then you can look to that war link, and that's kind of how that stays in this round today. And then we were talking about business confidence and how that links to the economy. So the argument there is saying that we have these small businesses who are having a hard time financially recovering from the pandemic and from that whole situation we had back early in 2020. And so we can look to that. The negative agrees that, business confidence and having little small businesses is a good contribution to the economy. Well, if we are taking, not letting them recover before we're taking out this big debut on the economy, let's say raising taxes, because when the government needs money, we raise taxes. So if the government is needing to raise taxes, then we have to be able to subside for those small businesses who may or may not be able to pay for that because they are already still recovering from what happened in 2020. And just to kind of go over that, basically why I honestly see nothing but a negative ballot. The Affirmative's plan does have some good advantages to it, of course, because it's helping our water infrastructure, but they do not have the means or the purpose behind what they're trying to do. The whole point of the Affirmative's case is to force people to do something, which is going to end in essentially wars, our economy being horrible, people not being able to get clean water in the first place. And so this is why you would be passing the negatives counter plan, because basically we're giving these farmers to incentive to change, and change is what needs to happen before we can force people to do something. You need to give them the option to do so, and if you're going to be forcing it, then you have to require to be able to withhold the backlash, which the Affirmative has not been able to do in this round today. So therefore, I see nothing but a negative ballot, and we're going to be voting on the economy and the CP, and it should all just flow through. Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to be taking any prep. But I will give an off-time roadmap. I'm going to be going over my case, and then, actually, I'm going to go over a topic case matter, very brief, then my case, then going over my opponent's case in the order of their incentive CP, their econ and bizcon DA, or their econ DA, and then their EPA resources DA. Sound good? All right. Is anybody not ready? In that case, I'm going to start my time now. Now, Judge Ling, in the topic case matter, you're going to notice that if you've been following, you'll notice that throughout the case, my opponents have failed to address the fact that we are incentives. We are a hybrid system of incentives and regulations. My opponents never responded to that. They never addressed that. And that's going to be key in responding to every single one of their DAs and CPs. Now, moving on to my case, my opponents completely concede each one of our impacts and every part of them, except they make a small response on solvency that I'll get to. Now, starting off with an overview of our impacts. The first key thing that we stop is we stop antibiotic resistance diseases, which kill billions and cost trillions of dollars. This huge impact has been widely conceded. This is not only going to happen in the future, and it will continue to scale up, but it is empirically true that they've already killed millions, and they will continue until they kill billions of people. That went unresponded to. Furthermore, we prevent agricultural dead zones as a result of non-point source pollution, which destroy oceanic diversity and threaten extinction, costing billions of dollars. On rural sustainability, we told you that industrialized agriculture has caused lowered food security for rural communities and increased populism. Populism is a gateway into war as a result of the instability and the lack of democratic virtues which are held by populists. Now, on solvency, the only response my opponents made is that we are forcing people to do things that they're not going to listen. We're going to address that a little later, but the only thing that they tell you is that if we force them, then Doring says that they're going to push back. But first of all, this is a gross misrepresentation in their Doring card. Their Doring card doesn't say they're going to push back. It just says it's undemocratic. And in fact, the Doring card is saying that just all rules are undemocratic. Well, I'm sorry, but that would mean that your kindergarten playground was undemocratic in some sort of authoritarian regime simply by the fact that it has rules. Rules are not undemocratic. This is also non-unique because we have rules. The own infrastructure bill which they were talking about has regulations. This is all non-unique. But furthermore, on their econ bizcon DA, we gave you 5 responses here. They only responded to 2, and very weakly so. We first gave you the Porter link turn, which tells you that right now innovation and business confidence are helped by regulations. Business confidence is the key to all of their impacts on this bizcon DA, and they never extended it. They never responded to this link turn. Furthermore, we told you that that their Rosenbaum evidence is not actually saying that business confidence is key, that they misrepresent the Rosenbaum evidence. The Rosenbaum evidence is the only link that they give to our case. But furthermore, they told you that the responses that we made about their evidence being out of date is not true because we don't give any more recent evidence. But this is the same thing as just making like a baseless claim because all of their evidence doesn't actually refer to the current status quo. I could give evidence like from 100 years ago and pass it off as true just because they don't have evidence to the contrary, that's more recent. That's not how that works. Furthermore, they read to a White House card saying that right now the Biden infrastructure bill passed, which costs billions of dollars and trillions of dollars, and that's like putting stress on the economy, and we can't add more. But first of all, this is a blatant misrepresentation of their evidence. The evidence never says anywhere that we can't add more stress. This logical argument that they're making about increasing stress on the economy is completely fabricated and completely made up. They provide no evidence for this, and furthermore, we apparently are going to have to like raise taxes and stuff like that. But this card is completely misrepresented. It does not say that. We're just going to draw from the debt like we always do. They never say why drawing for the debt is a stress on the economy. And even if it is true, it is non-unique because the fact of the matter is that we have trillions of dollars in debt, over $20 trillion in debt, and we haven't seen their impact materialize. You're not going to buy this card because it's a lie. They are misrepresenting it to you, and that is clearly seen if you read the card. Now, furthermore, on the incentive CP. Sorry, I went a bit out of order there. But on the incentive CP, we gave to you 5 responses. They only respond to the perm and the perm and the fact that we are incentives. But first of all, the AFIS incentives, every one of the incentives they named are incentives that we implement. You're not going to buy their argument. But furthermore, they told you, they read to you their Doring card, which says that we can't force people because it just causes, because it's like not democratic and stuff like that. But like I said, if democracy means no rules, then the United States is not a democratic nation. You're not going to buy this argument. This is like some broad talking about, and furthermore, this is just broadly talking about like democracy. It's not an actual impact. But furthermore, they tell you this card is about raising prices for farmers, and we tell you that we increase incentives for farmers. We increase it in the funding that they get from the government. We're actually helping them. We're not raising prices, which means that their impacts are not materialized. On the Cook 20 card about bankruptcy, we increase funding again here. We don't cause bankruptcy because we increase the money going to these farms. Furthermore, this card is just saying that that bankruptcy is scary. It's not actually saying, that the changes are scary, not that they're actually going to go bankrupt. And they never give you a number about how many are going to go bankrupt. Furthermore, this is non-unique because they themselves admit like that regulations like the CWA already exist. They never tell you why this is a unique argument that farms are going to go bankrupt, and they never tell you like how many farms are going to go bankrupt. You can't buy this because it is a non-existent impact. Furthermore, so you're going to perm the CP because we are incentives, we are regulation. They never really give you good evidence as to why regulations are bad. On the EPA resources DA, we gave you 4 responses here. None of them were responded to. They never had an impact. We told you that they were non-unique. This one unresponded to. We told you that there's already chronic underfunding that went unresponded, and we told you we already solved for this because we give funding to the EPA, and for those reasons, you're going to negate.
We're going to just start some running prep. We have 2:42 remaining, and we will start that now.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, and then I'm going to stop prep there. And then before we get started, as a bit of an off-time roadmap, I'll just be going over the affirmative arguments that were made in the last rebuttal, and then be going over why you're going to vote for the negative today with some voters. So is everybody ready?
Go ahead.
Perfect. And then with that, I will begin. So first of all, the affirmative brought up this argument that like we don't specifically attack their case. However, in policy, the negative's burden of proof is to win on one like stock issue. This can be CPs, this can be DAs, this can be anything. And we even talked about their solvency and how they don't solve for the plan because forcing people is bad. And then they talked about how there's like no evidence behind it. However, our Dowring in 16 card literally says efforts by the federal government to regulate agriculture is one of the biggest challenges facing farmers and ranchers. If we're going to let the government dictate where we can and cannot farm, then this is not a land of liberty. That card right there talks about how and why regulation is bad and why, like, even if they have incentives in their case, why you need to prefer the negs incentive CP, because it talks about how the regulations are bad, and they bring up this argument that there's already enforcement and regulations in other areas, but these ones have been around for a long period of time, and they're not going to harm farmers and cause them to go into bankruptcy, like our Cook in 20 card talks about. So that's going to be a big thing in today's round, because you're going to favor the incentive CP ran by the negative in today's round, because no matter, like, even if their plan does have incentives, first of all, they're saying like incentives are good and they work. So like, you're just going to flow through all of those arguments. And then second, we talk about why the regulation side of it is bad. So you're just going to prefer the side that has the good in it, the incentive CP side, which talks about like how it's beneficial just to provide the CP, like the incentives, and not have regulation, because the regulation is bad for farmers and ultimately bad for our economy, which moves us down to our economy DA. They talk about like how the infrastructure is just like a logic-based argument, but they're like, the whole attack on that is just like, oh, it's just a logic-based argument, it doesn't matter. But if you look to the statistics, like if you look that like one part of this huge infrastructure bill is $55 billion that we're taking out of the, like, taking from the federal government right now. That's huge. That's like a huge chunk of money that we're taking out of the government right now. And the Affirmative's plan wants to get funding from the federal government for their plan, and they want to get funding for the EPA as well. So that's like a lot of money, and that's going to cause us big problems. We're already still recovering from the COVID-19, like we talked about in our first speech. So this is why you're going to favor the econ DA ran by the neg, because we want our economy to be strong. We don't want to have like these wars and things like that. And then they also talk about like our link, like our internal link. Let me see if I can grab it really quick. Our internal link, which talks about how it directly relates to war, but they don't ever talk about our link that like federal regulations cause investor flight. This goes on to further prove our incentive CP. Like, regulations just cause people to leave. It's why you need to favor the negative today. So they don't talk about the link, and they say our link's completely destroyed, but they completely ignore like our regular link and just attack the internal link. But even with our internal link, like if the United States goes into economic decline, then we're going to see war. And they talk about like, oh, well, like Biden wouldn't do the same thing or whatever, or we don't have cards for that, but neither do they. So them trying to build this argument off of like, we don't have cards, or like that we can just bring up a card from any period of time, doesn't flow through, because like our card is from 2018 and it talks about like the president. It doesn't mean like it's specific to Donald Trump. You can flow it over to President Joe Biden, because like the underlying fact is that United States economic decline causes Iran war and makes the decline go global. Like, that's just the underlying fact of the entire argument. So them trying to kick the internal link doesn't matter. So let's move on to our voters. Our incentive CP still stands in the round, and if anything, it was even proven how important it is by the affirmative in today's round. So you're going to flow this and have it as a very, very high priority issue today when you're voting, and you're going to vote for the neg because of the incentive CP. Next is our econ DA. The affirmative causes econ decline, and we've proven this in multiple different ways that like that cause war, and that the infrastructure, like they're using the federal government as their funding, but we already have a lot of funding from the federal government for this infrastructure bill. So overall, it's just a bad idea completely. So for the reasons of the incentive CP and the econ DA, there's no reason for you to have any ballot other than a negative ballot in today's round. Thank you.
Daniel, are you the last one?
Yep. Okay. Yeah, no new cards or anything. Let me just mute myself on the other platforms. All right. So the order. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, my video for a second. All right. The order is going to be case, and then the CP and the disad. Okay. Is anybody not ready? Cool. At the beginning of their speech, our opponents tried to pseudo-extend an argument about solvency and how forcing people into doing things is bad. But this ignores two critical facets of our AF. One, we also incentivize the individual farmers as laid out by the plan, specifically the good evidence, which was unresponded to throughout the entire debate. And two, they don't tell you why forcing people is inherently bad. They say we would reduce liberty. That is a platitude if I've ever heard one. They don't give you a direct disadvantage apart from less freedom. But that is not a reason to reject an AF that has tangible improvements, which we lay out and they don't respond to. Going over to those. One, we stop antibiotic resistance, which saves trillions of dollars and billions of people. 2, we stop dead zones, which solves biodiversity and saves billions of dollars. And then 3, we actually bolster the condition for these rural communities that supposedly value freedom so much and stop possible diversionary war due to the disenfranchisement. None of this goes responded to, Judge. Your flow should just be empty on case, or it should be a bunch of arrows that already should be a reason to vote for the AF. But on the supposed off cases that they want to weigh the case solely against. First, on the counterplan, there are 2 reasons why this should not be a voter. 1, if you do make it a voter, then it flows AF, because we told you a billion times that we are incentives, which means all their evidence about why incentives are inherently good flows AF. And 2, they don't respond to any of the defense that we do on the counterplan, and they don't give you a direct impact besides pushback. Then they already give you no reasons to reject the AF or value the counterplan over the plan. That means that the counterplan should either blow AF throughout this entirety of the round, or 2, not even be considered. On to the disadvantage. Critically, they drop their small business confidence link here, which means you're going to value solely on the infrastructure bill card, which they read on the 2NC. But that card is bad, and it should go without saying. The reason it is bad is because it doesn't give you a specific reason why putting more pressure into the economy is bad in and of itself. They try to run it off as economic collapse, but nowhere in the White House evidence does it say that the economy is under pressure. They never read to you a reason why passing a mere $7 billion compared to the trillions of dollars that we spend on a yearly basis is inherently bad. So critically, their evidence doesn't actually indicate what they are saying. And as long as that is the case, then you are not going to value the disad. But moreover, their war link is not only a wash at best, but it is greatly mishandled. They don't bring it up in the 2NC. They just bring it up in the 2NR like nothing happened. So either you don't value it because they don't know how to extend it correctly, or 2, you value it against our impacts and we clearly win. Because on the impact outflow, this debate was over after the 2AC. 1, on the ABR, or antibiotic resistance link, they not only don't contest it, but they concede its full magnitude of 3 billion people dying at least and trillions of dollars being lost. That automatically outweighs any sort of war scenario that they would like to bring up. 2, on dead zones, they don't contest the billions of dollars that will definitely be lost due to our empirical evidence, which means on that front, we win on all possible probability. And 3, they don't contest the war link on populism, and because we give you a specific mechanism by which these populists get elected, which is rural disenfranchisement, then that means we have the stronger war link if you want to value this debate on that. Fundamentally, the AF has won or defended every single attack that the NEG has brought up. So you have 2 choices here. First, either you vote for AF based off the lack of impacts and defense on the NEG, on our case and their off cases, or 2, you give us all their impacts, because fundamentally, since we are incentives and because we have economic benefits that are never contested by the AF, then that means the best possible case scenario is the plan. They don't contest the effectiveness of that plan, and more importantly, they don't contest the fact that we are incentives, that we do have economic benefits, which we've laid out in every single speech, which means that not only is their CP better off by you voting AF, but their disadvantage is more likely to be solved if you vote AF. You can either vote on a case and the lack of defense, or you can vote on the turns that we make on both of their off-case positions. But there is no way this is not an AF ballot. All right, good debate.
Thank you guys so much for the debate today, and thank you for judging.
Oh,
Thank you for doing this debate.
absolutely. So, good debate. How does this usually work? Because last time I gave my feedback immediately.
I don't. Last judge didn't disclose, but we don't do Springboard too often. I think it's
Our
just
judge
up to-
disclosed last round.
right. Okay, then I guess it's up to your discussion. We're fine.
So, so what I'll do is I'll give you general feedback about the debate, and then from a points perspective, I will put that in. Okay. So, so my general feedback, right? So, well put, well articulated. A couple of times